week I'm just doing kind of a quick asides covering EventBus in TornadoFX. In JavaFX, events can either take place in the foreground or the background. By default, these events are processed in the main thread. However, implementing long-running tasks on the JavaFX main thread or the application thread can make an application UI unresponsive. So it's recommended to send these tasks on one or more background threads and let the application thread handle user events only. Let's offer EventBus, which is excellent for reducing coupling between controllers and views by passing messages instead of having hard references to each other and without all the manual housekeeping. And if we look at this application that we have, it's kind of inspired from my TornadoFX suite, where we take a project and we upload it and we read the files in it. You can see that there's quite a bit going on with the stack pane, which kind of represents the console itself, and what we're going to be looking at for the main bit is the action that's set within the button. Essentially, we upload our project and we clear the items in the console. We're going to call walk, which resides in the controller itself, and what walk does is that it opens up the directory that we uploaded and walks through each of the files that we care about, and then it's going to read it and then add it back to the console. So you can kind of see that we're using dependency injection already, which couples our controller and our main view to each other, and that's how we add it. So here we are uploading our files. I'm just going to pick some other TornadoFX KChat, which is another Kotlin Thursday project in which we take TornadoFX and read some Kafka. Pretty cool stuff, looks like it works. In my project for TornadoFX Suite, this actually gets pretty heavy on the whole processing thing. Part of it is because there's a lot of files to read, and the other part is that we start worrying about AST parsing, which takes a lot of processing and a whole lot of time. So it makes sense for me to actually take our walk and our processing and send it to the back thread. We can move our file reads into a background thread with FX event. So essentially we create an extension class that takes a parameter, and for FX events itself, by default it's going to run on the application thread. We could also set the parameter to the background thread. That means that it will be given a background thread by default so that it can do heavy work without blocking the UI. An EventBus doesn't know where things are coming or going, but you do need two components. You need a trigger and a listener. We're going to fire this event, which acts as a controller. We're also going to need a listener event, which in TornadoFX you use with subscribe. You're going to need a listener event, which we're going to do with TornadoFX's subscribe. So in our init, we're going to basically have, at the creation of our view class, we're going to subscribe our read files request, and it's always going to be listening for this trigger within this view. So this is great. We now have our event running in the background thread. Let's see how this looks when we finally do that. Except our application kind of runs a major error. And the reason for that is that now we've tried to write our result back in the console. It appears that we've sent our job back and tried to write the items back in the console while we're still in the background thread. So this really won't work. If we send a job for processing in the background thread, we actually have to send the result back to the application thread to be able to use it in the UI and then write it to the console. Let's create another FX event that intends on sending emitted event data back to the main thread. And again, by default, if we don't put in a parameter, we're going to have an FX event which is going to run on the application thread. In our controller, we have these view.console that we're writing in. So really what we want to do is send the result back of the file and the file text, and we're going to emit it in an event which is going to exist in the main thread. Now that we're sending our event data back to the main thread, we can kind of do a neat trick by subscribing right in our view. Normally you have your items.add, but the cool thing is whenever the system emits new data from files that are read, it can just write right back into the console no matter where it came from. And if we run this again and try to do the same thing, we shouldn't have that issue anymore where we're trying to write things to the console while still in the background thread, because at this point when we read the files, it's going to exist on the main thread. And the nice thing is it kind of runs a little bit faster. Of course, I'd probably have to add some animation to show that we're loading, but that's for another day. Hope you enjoyed this short bit on event buses in TornadoFX. And if you have any questions, feel free to check out the TornadoFX channel on the Kotlin Link Slack. And we'll see you next time.